Well, hello and welcome to Off the Bench on a glorious Thursday morning here in the city that never brotherly loves, Hamilton, Ohio. The city that never sleeps. Really, it's just Little Chicago. That's our nickname, the city of sculpture. But we got a good show for you lined up today. I don't want to call it a great show. Maybe that's up for you guys to decide. But we had a lot of fun yesterday. This will be my last day on the show this week. Tomorrow, Tracy will be back. He'll be heading up the show solo. I got a lot of things to do tomorrow, so I've got to attend to that. And T will be in here in the chair. And you can see on the crawl below, back when we used to be on ESPN Radio, I had to plan 6 segments. And the bit was that I never planned for 6 segments. So now here in the hour that we've got, from 10-ish to 11-ish here on Off the Bench, Chatterbox Sports, I've got a plan for 5 segments, and you know what? We're going to plan for 4, and we'll just dealer's choice on that fifth segment. You know what it's going to be, kind of like Stone, as we welcome in Stone. Stone, how are you on this lovely Thursday afternoon?
Oh, I'm doing phenomenal, Reed. How are we doing?
I'm doing great. You know what the show is going to be like? You're a music guy. If you guys don't know this about Stone, his favorite music artist, and we're not gonna shame him for this because this guy makes bops. His favorite music artist is Justin Bieber. It is. Is that true?
That is correct. Yeah, I got no shame in that.
Yeah. I just told him the other day, I was like, man, I heard this deep track from Justin Bieber. You got to listen to it. And he's like, what was it? And he's like, I heard them all. I was like, it's an oldie. It's Baby. And he was like, come on, man. I did the same bit when Elliot was here about AJR. I was like, you ever heard this song Bang by AJR? Because that was his favorite band. But you're a music guy. You know what this show's going to kind of be like? It's going to be kind of like jazz. It's going to be free-flowing. It's not going to be as buttoned up as Monday, Tuesdays, or Wednesday's show, or Monday or Tuesday's show was. It's going to be nice and smooth. In fact, do you want to play the bass or do you want to play the drums?
What about the saxophone?
No, you got
One or
2
the
options.
other? Okay,
You got 2 options here. You want to play the bass or the drums?
Probably the drums.
All right, I need you to give me this right here. Ready?
Yeah.
Got that? All right, that's my tempo. Keep it going. And I'll come in with the ba-doom, doom, 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 doom. Then we got to get, can you scat? Can you get like skiddity scat, scooby?
I don't have that in my bag.
All right, let's get into the show already because now I've wasted enough of your guys' time. But it's going to be a fun show for you guys today. And the one thing that I wanted to start the show off with in my final show this week is obviously I've talked about how important this game is this Sunday. I was looking at the schedule, and I don't know why I keep thinking about, man, we got to get a win here. I'm just trying to map out a Bengals path to the postseason as best as I possibly can. And I look at the next 2 games this Sunday in Minnesota, a tough place to play. We are playing a backup quarterback in Carson Wentz with our backup quarterback, Jake Browning. And then you go to Denver next Monday on Monday Night Football. You got to win one of those 2 games. If you're able to pull out 2 wins, it's amazing. But if you lose the next 2 games, then you can see how this season can kind of derail very quickly. So we're not even going to go into that. And I thought as I continue to map out how the Bengals can get it done, how the Bengals can keep their postseason hopes alive, and just pray that sometime in mid to late December, Joe Burrow comes back healthy. He's ready to go. He's ready to sling it, and we can take on the AFC playoff picture the best we can. And the big thing this entire offseason, obviously we know what kept us out of the postseason last year. It was 2 things: a slow start and bad defensive play. They had a sub-500 record last year in games in which they scored more than 30 points. 35 points, I think, was the exact stat, which is hard to fathom. It's hard to fathom that's possible. So this entire offseason, we said, what we need from this defense, we don't need them to be the 85 Bears. We don't need this defense to be the early 2000s Ravens with Ray Lewis and Ed Reed. Heck, we don't even need them to be the Philadelphia Eagles, who probably have the best defense in the league right now. We needed them to be league average. We needed to float around. There's 32 teams in the league. We needed this defense to be 14th to 18th. And let Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins cook. Obviously, that map to the postseason, that map to greatness for the Cincinnati Bengals is kind of scrapped. Because even though Jake Browning is 5-3 as a starting quarterback for the Cincinnati Bengals, we understand that the potency of this offense had taken a drastic hit, taken a drastic beating. And Jake Browning scored a lot of points as our starting quarterback. Don't break no bones about it. And I still think he can, but even the most optimistic fan, even the most optimistic Jake the Snake Browning supporter will admit that this offense isn't going to put up 30-plus points against the Ravens, all the games that the Bengals played last year. So, typically, when, an elite player goes down in a locker room, like Joe Burrow, it might be foolish thinking, but there's a lot of hoorah and rah-rah. You go in the locker room, and what do you say? You say the old cliches that everyone needs to step up just a little bit more. Right? You've seen this in your family. Maybe someone isn't making as much money as they thought. Their hours got cut, or I cut grass on the side, and there's been a drought. there's been a drought for the last month, and grass isn't growing. And when you expect that money to be kind of part of your income, you wonder. You're like, man, I'm gonna have to figure out some other way to figure out that lapse in the income, right? I'm going to have to figure out how we're going to make up that deficit in the budget. The same thing can be said for a team when you lose a player like Joe Burrow. So you can look around like, hey, Jamar, you're going to need to break one more tackle. Chase Brown, you're going to need to rush for 30 more yards and, get us one extra first down. Orlando Brown, you're going to need to hold that block for a second longer. Cam Taylor-Britt, you're going to need to break up one more pass a game. However it is, to bridge the gap of the deficiencies that you're losing with Joe Burrow, you got to get it done. And the Bengals defense has played, I think, about better than we expected. I think that's fair to say. I think at the midpoint of the Browns game, we're sitting here going, what the heck is this defense as they break off another third down conversion? It's 3rd and long for Joe Flacco and the Browns, and they outgained us 2-1. The Jags outgained us. But we were able to get 4 turnovers in those 2 games. And Stone, if you got a second, I think there was a graphic from ESPN, if you want to go ahead and bridge that up. Bengals are 2-0 despite averaging 245 yards per game. That's their offense. The defensive totals have been, they've allowed a 38 total QBR. That's the second best in the league. They've had 4 turnovers, and they haven't had a high blitz rate. So what that's telling you is there may be a little bit of luck involved, but they've been able to kind of nullify the opponent's offenses, especially the quarterback position. A big part of that is interceptions, and you can bring us back now. So the defense is going to have to step up just a little bit more. No longer are we asking the defense to be, 14th to 18th best in the league. If we want to make the postseason, this defense is going to have to be better than that, point blank. I don't know how many lucky wins the Bengals got in their bag. Maybe they're owed a few from the last 2 years. But you can't expect to go in and just luck out a win every single week. You're going to need a few of them. We've already gotten 2. But you can't allow Joe Flacco to outgain you 2-1 and win. You can't allow Trevor Lawrence to go for 400 yards, and I think that Jags offense is actually going to be pretty good. But, a couple drop passes in both games really are the difference between the Bengals being 2-0 and being 0-2. So who can step up now? We know Shamar Stewart's going to be hurt for a little bit of time. Trey Hendrickson has been otherworldly, I'd say. He might not have the sack numbers that you'd expect, but the pressures have been immense. He's the reason that we've got the turnover in the red zone against the Jags. He tipped the ball, put the pressure on Trevor Lawrence, that floated it right up and was an easy pick for Dax Hill. We need Trey Hendrickson to get back to the quarterback one extra time a game. We need, as I mentioned, Cam Taylor-Britt, Dax Hill, guys in the secondary to just hold coverage a little longer. essentially what I'm getting at is this defense has had their goalposts moved back. That's something we talk a lot about in sports radio. Oh, they're moving the goalposts. This was the preseason. This is what we needed preseason. League average defense. But yeah, the goalposts have been moved back, unfortunately, with Joe Burrow's injury. It's no longer a 40-yard field goal. It's now you're going to need about a 47-yarder. It's going to be a little tougher. You're going to need a 50-yard field goal now. Stone, I know you're viciously typing away here. But just wanted to get your thoughts on preseason. We talked about how this Bengals defense needed to be league average. Now, 2 weeks into the season, we lose our starting quarterback. We're going to need them to be a little bit better.
Yeah, absolutely. There's really no doubt about that. I think they've shown improvement. I think the tackling is probably the most promising thing that we've seen with the Cincinnati Bengals defense. To this point, we talked at length about Anarumo's unit the past 2 years, especially early in the season. They really struggled getting guys on the ground, and obviously that's fundamental number one when you're talking about playing professional football. So that certainly has been better, but there also is the cause for concern that, hey, this team is a little bit turnover reliant, right? They were able to force a lot of turnovers against Cleveland, against Jacksonville, and both of those respective offenses for Cleveland and Jacksonville kind of continuously shot themselves in the foot. So we're 2-0 right now, and I think in large part due to the turnovers that the defense has created. But once you face a perennial type of offense in the National Football League, for instance, the Baltimore games, I mean, it's not going to cut it how you've played to this point. But you absolutely hit the nail on the head. We kind of said just coming in, you need to be around that 15 to 20 range as far as your defense goes in the National Football League with Joe Burrow. Now, if you want to be able to have success, be around for the race for the postseason at the end of the season, it's going to have to be a lot better than that. We'll see if they're up for the challenge.
Yeah, it's another opportunity this Sunday because they're going to be field goal underdogs. They're playing what I think is a top 3 offensive mind in the league, top 5, Kevin O'Connell. But you're playing an offense, though it has a lot of weapons, Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson. They're going to be without their starting left tackle, starting center, starting quarterback, and they split time at running back between Jordan Mason and Aaron Jones. But Aaron Jones is going to be missing as well. So are you able to put your offense in a week in which you are playing a backup quarterback? Are you able to take a little bit of pressure off once again? They did it week 1. To a lesser extent, they did it in week 2. Are you able to put your offense in a chance to win a kind of an ugly game? And I remember the first game that Jake Browning ever started. It was after the Bengals lost to the Baltimore Ravens on Thursday Night Football in a highly touted game. The Bengals at the time were looking like the best team in the league. The Ravens were, if not the second best team in the league. It was a highly touted game. Joe Burrow goes down, hurts his wrist. We know the rest of the story. We had a show down on the banks. Tom, Elliott, I were all there. It was before a Steelers game. It was cold, blistering, and I kept asking the question, can the Bengals win an ugly game? Can Zac Taylor earn his keep in slopping up the game? Pouring some water on the field so it's nice and muddy. Not literally, but hypothetically. Can you win an ugly game? And it's weird to imagine a team that passes it as much as the Minnesota Vikings that have won 14 and 13 games respectively in the last 2 years. And the Bengals who, there's nothing hard-nosed really about the way that they play. They're going to sling it around the field. They're much more Big 12 than SEC or Big 10. Can they win an ugly game? Can they slop it up? Can we win the time of possession and hold on and kind of ground and pound? I don't know what's ahead for this Sunday. I can see it going a myriad of ways. Maybe we just – and expecting the Vikings with their backup quarterback and a couple pieces missing on the line, expecting them to really shrink their offensive playbook and expecting us to not have the same offensive playbook with Jake Browning as opposed to Joe Burrow doing the same. You'd expect typically when 2 backup quarterbacks play that, hey, there's going to be a lot of running the ball. It's going to be a slow game. It's not going to be a pretty watch. Is that what we're in for? Because I can also see both teams slinging it 40-plus times. And we could sit here on Monday morning and go, man, I can't believe we dropped back Jake Browning 47 times yesterday, and we lose by a field goal or something along that lines, and that would be a storyline because, we gave them too many opportunities to on their offensive side of the ball. But essentially, everyone's going to need to step up. Everyone is going to need to step up. And, one player that I look on the offensive side of the ball to step up, and maybe we'll get into the buy or sells here instead of going straight to the Reds segment. But one offensive player that I expect to step up as well is Ja'Marr Chase. We saw him get the ball frequently on Sunday against the Jacksonville Jags, especially after Joe Burrow went down. Because what you do is you expect your best playmaker to move the ball, point blank. You get the ball in his hands, and when you're Zac Taylor, you have a unique opportunity when you have Ja'Marr Chase, players like Ja'Marr Chase, because though it's not really in the MO to be like, hey, we've got to run screenplays and everything like that. When you've got a player that can evade tackles, when you got a player that can bust it loose at any given time on the field, is a deep threat, can catch the ball over the middle of the field, can catch it on the perimeters, all the above with Ja'Marr Chase, you just get the ball to his hands as frequently as possible. You talk often about going into a game, man, we've got to establish the run, and I think that's going to be a big part. Right, I think that's a big part going into this year with Joe. I think it's going to be a big part with Jake Brown. They've got to at least commit to the box in some capacity so we can move the ball out on the perimeters. But it's just as much as, hey, we've got to get Chase Brown going early. We've got to get this run game going early. I think you got to get the ball to Ja'Marr Chase as frequently as possible because you never know. Week 1, Ja'Marr wasn't a big part of the offense. Week 2 is a huge part of the offense, 150 yards. That's going to have to continue if the Bengals want to continue to win. And as I mentioned before, the first 2 weeks, you're able to win, just kind of out of the hat, pull a rabbit out of the hat. If you can do that one more time in the next 2 weeks, you keep your season alive. If you go to 2-2, you lose to the Vikings, you lose to the Denver, which are both going to be tough games. They're both going to be underdogs. If you lose both those games, you can see how this season can kind of unravel at the seams very quickly, especially with the games after that. But if you're able to win one, you keep it alive. If you're able to win both, man, oh man, we're cooking with gas here in Cincinnati. Stone, we have some buy or sells to get into to talk about the Cincinnati Bengals here. Let's do some buy or sells.
Well, we got the first one right up there on the screen right now, kind of what you were alluding to there with Ja'Marr Chase. The buy or sell question is, he is the most important player. Obviously, I agree with everything you said about how important he is, but is he the most important player if you had to pick? Are you buying or selling that?
I think I'm buying that he is our most important player. You can point to a couple guys on the defense, Trey Hendrickson. He's obviously going to have to be a disruptor, but I think it's no question that Ja'Marr Chase is our best player. Oh, no! Oh, okay. We are having an emergency alarm in our office. I don't know what to do. I guess if it rings again, we'll go again.
Okay.
Yeah. This is not the first time this has happened, Stone, by the way.
All right.
It's been many a times that we've had shows live here. It seems like they only happen at 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. I don't know why they can't ever get them in 3 p.m., but the alarm was going off for a quick second, and it stole my train of thought. But Ja'Marr Chase, he's the best player on the team. He is. And you could argue that he's the best player on the team, and if Joe Burrow is there. There's, we talk about Joe Burrow being a top 4 quarterback in the league. Ja'Marr Chase is a top 2 wide receiver at worst. He's either 1 or 2. Him and Justin Jefferson. You're going to see both play this weekend. I think Ja'Marr Chase is absolutely the most important player on this team going forward. Say you?
I'm going to sell that personally. I hear everything you're saying about how important he is, and I agree that the success of the team going forward is certainly going to depend largely on Ja'Marr Chase, but I would say it's Jake Browning. He plays the quarterback position. He touches the ball in every single play. And the reality of the situation is if Jake Browning goes out there and throws 3 interceptions every single game, the Bengals probably are going to lose every single game the rest of the season. He has to do a better job of taking care of the football, and he also has to find opportunities to get the ball to his playmakers down the football field, right? Yeah, we can talk about, let's go under center, let's turn around, let's hand the ball off, let's run these wide receiver screens. That's all good, and that can win you a few games, but if you really want to stick around, be in the thick of this playoff race as the season comes down to the wire, a time in which you hope Joe Burrow could possibly return, you're going to have to lean on him to make some plays. That's just the reality of playing quarterback in the National Football League, especially with the defense that Cincinnati has. Can they improve? Can they get a little bit better? Can they be a tick above league average? I think that is in the realm of possibility. But for them to just ascend out of nowhere into a top 10 defense in the National Football League where they're not giving up more than 20 points a game, I don't think that is realistic. And, it's maybe a little bit unfair that there's so much pressure on Jake Browning, but at the same time, he's a quarterback in the National Football League, and he's replacing Joe Burrow. So if I had to pick one player specifically, I would pick Jake Browning, but I do understand that if he's going to have success and if this team is going to have success, they're going to have to get it to Jamar Chase a lot. But if I'm picking one, I say Browning.
Who do you think the last person to wear a buttoned-up shirt on off the bench was?
I don't know, Casey or nobody?
Casey was a good call. I don't even know if Casey owns a buttoned-up shirt, maybe. No, it's Tom. Tom was the only one to ever wear a buttoned-up shirt. I don't know if anyone else ever has. You look good. What's the purpose, or what was the thought behind the button-up shirt? Because you look great, Stone.
I appreciate that. No real purpose going out to dinner tonight, so I figured just, one fit. Don't have to, wear something else here and then change, save a little bit on the laundry side of things. But I don't know, Matt. Maybe I'll just going forward, I'll rock the button-up. I kind of like it.
Where are we going to dinner? Where are we getting some food?
Just somewhere, downtown. My birthday's coming up, so going out with the folks tonight downtown. So that
you don't want to tell me, do you? You don't want to tell me, do you?
Yeah, we'll keep it on the down low, but
that sounds like a Ruby's dinner to me. If I've ever heard.
I don't know about that.
Never been. Everyone tries to sell me. This is that was a favorite bit with Elliot on the show. Is he used to sell me on going to Ruby's, and how he would sell me on going to Jeff Ruby's is like, you got to try their mac and cheese. Yeah. And I'm sure it's fantastic, but selling me on a $200 bill because their mac and cheese is good is a tough sales point.
That's fair.
That's a tough sales point. It's fair. It'd be like you trying to sell me on $1 million home, and it's like, yeah, but the toilets flush great, bro. Like they got great plumbing in this building. And it's like, yeah, I'd hope so. I'd hope they'd have it. All right, next buy or sell.
All right, here we go. Next buy or sell here is this. The pass rush isn't good enough to be a league average defense.
So I just brought up that they need to be league average or they need to be better going forward. When you're missing your starting quarterback, everyone's going to need to step up just a little bit. So can the pass rush be better, and be good enough to get this team to be league average? I don't know how long Shamar's out. Do you know how long Shamar's out? Has that been reported?
I think it's very much a week-to-week situation. Okay. Limited in practice. Actually, let's just check right now. We don't need to be spreading any false rumors here. I will look to make sure if he practiced or not.
I'll buy time. But the alarm's going off again. Guys, I don't know what's going on with the alarm. There's an emergency. I don't know if that's a gas emergency, because if it was like fire, it'd keep going off. I don't know if you guys can hear it through that. Shamar going down isn't going to help. Needs someone else.
Did not practice, by the way.
Okay, so he's going to miss a couple of weeks. Listen, Joseph Asai, Miles Murray, the pass rush, they're all going to need to be a little bit better. Trey, if you stay on par with what we've seen for the last 4 years with Trey Hendrickson, that's still pretty good. I will actually sell this. I actually have optimistic hope that this pass rush can be good enough to help this defense. Stone?
Yeah, I would agree. Look, it needs to be a lot better. It's very Trey Hendrickson reliant when it comes to their pass rush, but it's shown up at big points throughout these first 2 games. Has it been consistent? No. If you think about the first half against Cleveland, Joe Flacco was just kind of sitting back there picking apart the Bengals defense. Credit to the Bengals, they didn't give up any explosives in that game, which I think really allowed them to win the game, but a lot of stuff was open over the middle. Veteran quarterback Joe Flacco, he kind of was just taking what the Bengals defense was giving him, and it allowed them to make some plays and have some success moving the football. But I do have a lot of belief, obviously, in Trey Hendrickson. I've said it before here on Off the Bench. I think the Bengals are 0-2 without Trey Hendrickson, right? If he's in a situation where he's frustrated with his contract, he decided to sit out. We saw it with Chris Jones of Kansas City a couple of years ago where he missed 1 game. Well, if Trey Hendrickson would have missed 1 game or 2 games, and then the Bengals said, oh, shoot, we have to pay him, and then paid him, like, for instance, this week, it would be too late, especially with Joe Burrow being out. So I have a lot of belief in Trey Hendrickson. And, yeah, you look at the other side of it, I think what Shamar Stewart has been able to do has been promising from a young rookie. He showed up and been able to get some pressure on the opposing quarterback through a couple of games this year. Has the ankle, as we alluded to, has not practiced yet this week. He's kind of on a week-to-week basis. I probably would be surprised if we saw him play. Joseph Osai, he's on that 1-year prove-it deal, right? 1 year, $7.5 million. So he certainly wants to produce. I don't know if I necessarily believe that he can do that, but just with the guys that they have, Cam Sample, of course, another guy, and Miles Murphy, they have some pieces there. They've had those pieces there for a while, and they haven't really been able to show up. But with Trey Hendrickson and with hopefully Shamar Stewart playing more games than not this season, I believe that they will be able to have a good enough pass rush to be a league average defense here at this point. But if Trey Hendrickson, gets hurt, or if he, stops producing at the level in which he's producing, I think you can pretty much throw that away and say, okay, that's not going to happen. But with Trey Hendrickson, there's belief for me.
Yeah, and Shamar's played very, very well when he's been on the field, so we need to get him back. Hopefully he's back. I would say it's incredibly unlikely that he comes back this Sunday, but maybe he'll come back next Monday against the Denver Broncos out there in the Mile High City. Next buy or sell is?
The next buy or sell is this. Zac Taylor's job is safe and sound now.
Yeah, this was a precipitation of kind of the emotions that you were feeling on Monday or Sunday night, depending on when it really hits you hard. And if it was Stone's case, it was Monday night. Others, it was Sunday night. For me, it was Tuesday night when the Joe Burrow news finally settled in. I was too drunk on 2-0 to I was just riding high after we started 2-0 to really let the Joe Burrow stuff settle in. And a lot of the people that are Cincinnati Bengals fans want Zac Taylor gone. Understand why. I think he's a good coach. I think he can do better. I think he's a good coach, and I don't think he's the bane of existence that some lead him to be. I digress. The precipitation of the emotions was that, oh, man, we're not going to get a conclusion on the Zac Taylor saga this year, because we're not. It's safe. It's bye. His job is safe and sound, because when, the reviews come and you get to sit down with Mike Brown at the end of the year to talk about how you did your job, they can just go, listen, we didn't have Joe this year, so anything that terribly happens isn't because of me. Now, there is a small, I just said bye. His job is safe and sound. I think it's like 95% safe. The only way in which Zac Taylor loses his job is if things go off the rails immensely and they lose like 10 in a row. They lose this Sunday in Minnesota, they lose on Monday in Denver, and then it just boom, 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 loss. They're trading everyone away, and the thing just hides in. All right, let's start over new. That's the only way in which Zac Taylor loses his job. But I think we all knew once we saw Joe Burrow go down, and then the report came out that Joe Burrow was going to miss significant time. We're like, all right, we gave a goal for Zac Taylor this year. We said if they don't make the postseason, he probably should lose his job. Well, that's gone out the window because he has another excuse for why he doesn't make the postseason this year, if that's the case to be. But the other catch here is if the Bengals make the postseason, I mean, you might as well sign up for a Zac Taylor extension. If the Bengals make the postseason this year, Zac Taylor will be here for 3 more years, just point blank. It doesn't matter anything. So I'm buying that his job is safe and sound. What say you, Stone Shields?
Yeah, I'm buying as well. look, obviously this is an organization that let Marvin Lewis stick around for so long, and he didn't even win playoff games. Zac Taylor obviously has had a tremendous amount of success in the postseason. He found ways to win with a backup quarterback a couple of years ago in 2023. Now we're going to see if he can do it again here in 2025. We can revisit this if the Bengals lose 5 straight games and are like borderline eliminated from the playoffs before we even get to the month of December. That's fine. But for right now, I think he definitely is safe. It was my way of thinking that even if the Bengals with Joe Burrow missed out on the playoffs, a lot of teams, probably 90+% of the teams in the NFL would have fired him, but I didn't think Cincinnati was going to fire him. I think the front office and ownership of the Cincinnati Bengals love Zac Taylor. I think they have complete belief in him and believe that he is the guy to run this team for the foreseeable future and for years to come with Joe Burrow throughout the rest of his career and even beyond that. Like, I think this organization really thinks long-term when they're thinking about Zac Taylor. I know a lot of fans don't love that. I personally disagree. I think Zac Taylor is a perfect guy to be the head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals. And, yeah, I think he's going to be just fine as far as sticking around, unless something disastrous happens, right, where Jake Browning literally can't win a game. You go on this crazy losing streak. You can't put anything together. You can't move the football. You lose the locker room, right? That's another thing that Zac Taylor deserves credit for, is they've obviously had their frustrations over the past couple of years, but he's never lost the locker room. They've always had belief. They've always fought to the end, and they've always played their best football at the end of the season, even without Joe Burrow. That's a consistent theme, really, beyond year one, where they, of course, had the number 1 overall pick in 2020, and, of course, the following year when Joe Burrow got hurt. But beyond that, they played their best football at the end of the season, and there's data that backs that up. That's been happening now since 2021, so that's several years in a row in which that's been the case. Zac Taylor, he's just fine. Again, I know some people don't get fired up about that. Some people disagree with that, but he's not going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah, it mirrors the conversation that you have about quarterbacks a lot of the time, like the conversation that people that have a middle-of-the-pack quarterback. You're looking at teams like the Dallas Cowboys with Dak Prescott, who I think can be a top 10 quarterback on certain days. You're looking at, the Dolphins had this with Tua for a while. You're looking at just different areas in the NFL where you're like, yeah, he's a good quarterback. We saw this in Cincinnati for the longest time with Andy Dalton. Yeah, he's a good quarterback. Yeah, he can win games. But you feel like you can do better. That's what Zac Taylor is. He's the Andy Dalton of coaches. You can win with him. There's certainly things to be excited about. You mentioned it, and I said preach when you're talking about how they always fought. That's how I started off Monday's show, is that this team, for whatever reason, you can give Zac Taylor all the flack in the world. There was 2 different times where I'm like, throw a challenge flag, or I can't believe we didn't snap it in the game against Jacksonville. It's like, how does this happen? You can bite your teeth and grit your teeth all you want, but there's certainly things to be excited about when it comes to Zac Taylor as your head coach. You mentioned him. And there's also things that you wish he can do better, and hopefully he does do better into the future. But for better or worse, he's going to be the coach of the Cincinnati Bengals next year, unless the 5% chance that the Cincinnati Bengals season just goes off the rails in a hurry, which I suspect will happen if they don't win one of their next 2 games.
Next, buy or sell. Chase Brown will surpass his 2024 rushing total, which was 990 rushing yards. Almost got to that 1,000-yard point last year, but fell up just short. You buying or selling?
What was his total yards? Because I think what was his receiving? Because I think he was at like 1,400 yards last year.
Let's look.
Yeah, I think will he surpass his 2024 rushing total? Yes, he will. Yes, he will. He didn't get considerable snaps until, week 6? He was fighting with Zach Moss, even though we looked at Chase Brown and we're like, man, Chase Brown just looks so much better than Zach Moss right now. We brought Zach Moss in to be the veteran back. Chase Brown was supposed to be this kind of quicker guy. Zach's gonna run people over. Chase Brown won that job single-handedly, and you're just like, all right, let's keep feeding Chase Brown the ball. So, yes, I will buy that he will surpass 1,000 yards, especially with a backup quarterback. I think we're going to be running the ball a whole lot more. The only way in which he doesn't is an injury.
Yeah, I completely agree. It looks like 360 receiving yards for Chase Brown last year, so that's 1,350 total yards, scrimmage yards.
That's a really good year, man.
For Chase Brown. Yeah, I think my prediction coming into the year was that he was kind of going to become a household name around the NFL, where fans even outside of Cincinnati are like, oh, this running back in Cincinnati, he's the real deal. We'll see without Joe Burrow if that can necessarily come to fruition, but I completely agree. He's going to become more of a focal point in this offense without Joe Burrow. I think even with Joe Burrow, they were going to plan to use him a lot this year. Hopefully, obviously, he can stay healthy. But with Jake Browning, you're going to see a lot more under-snap stuff, right? Play-action game from under center. When Browning was the quarterback through that stretch in 2023, I believe he was in the gun about between 70 and 75% of the time, and Joe Burrow's in the gun over 90% of the time. So that's going to switch. You're going to see some more under-center stuff with Jake Browning. Try to open up that play-action game. And Chase Brown, he's got great speed. He's got great short area quickness running in between the tackles. And as we saw at the end of the Jacksonville game, he's incredible out of the backfield catching the football. And again, 360 receiving yards last year as well. He's going to be a security blanket for Jake Browning here throughout the rest of this season as someone that he can go to as far as checkdowns go if guys aren't open down the football field. So we talked about how critical Jamar Chase is going to be for this offense, obviously, with no Joe Burrow. But the next guy that I look to besides the quarterback would probably be Chase Brown. The Bengals need him to be really, really good. And if he can stay healthy, I anticipate he will be able to do just that.
I like Chase Brown a lot.
Me too.
A long time ago, I made takes on this show, which I think when I made the take, I was right. But now it's kind of moving because the game shifts and it's cyclical and it moves around. That I said, like, running backs aren't that important. It's, for whatever reason, that position you can replace with a third, fourth rounder. I think Chase Brown was a fourth rounder. Might have been a third. You can replace your Joe Mixon, who was maybe the best running back in the history of this franchise. I mean, he's certainly on the short list. Corey Dillon. There's other names up there, but like he's on the short list of greatest running backs in this franchise's history. And you draft a fourth rounder, and Chase Brown looks really good. And then in a couple of years, we'll probably have to draft another guy that'll replace Chase Brown, and it'll probably be okay. For whatever reason, that position, I do think he can get elite now. I think the game's gonna shift back towards running, as you know, after linebackers and safeties got a little smaller because the game got more pass heavy. That's where we're at currently right now. And we're seeing the best teams in the league, the Baltimore Ravens and the Philadelphia Eagles, really focus on, power and moving it inside the box. And now we're going to have linebackers get a little more bulkier and safeties get a little more bulkier. And then all of a sudden we're going to go back to passing the ball. And it's cyclical. It's punch, counter punch. It's a boxing match here between the offense and defense in the National Football League. Final question for buy or sell on the Bengals. Then we got to do ad read. So we'll do it quick.
Buy or sell, the linebacker room is improved.
Yeah, buy. Demetrius Knight has impressed me probably more than any rookie thus far. He's obviously gotten the most run. He has, without a doubt, impressed me the most. When it comes to linebacker play, frequently, I don't have a one-to-one comparison. I want to do an analogy. But you remember linebackers more when they miss tackles. Like when a linebacker's doing his job, it's oftentimes not a big deal. It's almost like a guard in the way that, like, when a guard's just doing his job, you're better off not noticing them on the field. Yeah, you can make a big play. Logan Wilson, you can strip a fumble. You can make an interception. You can have a huge hit. Sometimes they even blitz, and you can get after the quarterback. They can make big plays, but more often than not, a linebacker is best when you don't notice them a whole lot. And Demetrius Knight, you haven't noticed many flubs. You haven't missed many big tackles in the same way that I thought Jermaine Pratt missed a lot of big tackles last year. Logan Wilson also has played better this year, so that's an improvement to the linebacker room. Really quickly, buy or sell on this one?
Yeah, I'm buying this as well. Logan Wilson is better than he was the past couple of years. He looks healthier. He looks quicker. And I think that certainly is very beneficial for Cincinnati. Jermaine Pratt, he's a Cincinnati Bengals legend for what he did in the playoffs. Always will be, but it kind of had run its course. It was time to turn over a new leaf there at that linebacker position. Al Golden comes in. He gets 2 draft picks. Demetrius Knight, of course, has been great. And, Barrett Carter coming in as a backup that first game when Logan Wilson got hurt. I think Barrett Carter also has a future with this football team. game as well. They got a lot younger. They got a lot quicker. And just because they have youth doesn't mean that they have immaturity. Those two guys played a ton of college football at Clemson for Barrett Carter, and obviously Demetrius Knight jumped around to different places, finished out at South Carolina. But they're rookies, but they feel a lot more mature and professional than that. And I think they've really done a nice job of developing into NFL players, and I think they're only going to get better as time goes on. Clear bye here for me.
Thanks for picking up a heavy load of this show so far, Stone. Let's get into the ad reads on today's show. We got 20 minutes left on the show. We're going to talk a little bit about the Reds and around the rest of the NFL. We'll probably end with the Reds as we did yesterday because especially when the Chicago Cubs come to town, you probably don't want to hear a whole lot of my opinions on the Reds. But the Job Center is now hiring. Start working fast with weekly pay, flexible shifts, and great opportunities at top local employers. Apply in person at any location across 12 states or online at thejobcenter.com. Light up your events with Queen City Screens. Our cutting-edge LED video boards deliver vibrant visuals, crystal clear displays for any occasion. From concerts to corporate events, we've got you covered. Visit queencityscreens.com to rent your LED solution today. Queen City Screens, where brilliance meets impact. Had a great start to my morning, Stone.
Yeah.
I went on a run this morning, as I do most runs, but broke my 5K record.
Okay.
Got in just around 22 minutes, which I know I'm still slow, but it's been fun to run. And then while the show's been going on, my father-in-law, I was planning on, I put in the work calendar months ago. I was like, all right, when's Bark in the Park? Obviously, if you guys watch this show, you know my dogs mean a lot to me. I have 2 golden retrievers. Well, one's a Great Pyrenees golden retriever, but I got 2 dogs that mean a lot to me. And I saw Bark in the Park came on the same day that the Cubs came to town. Obviously, I'm a Cubs fan. I was like, man, I got to go. I looked up tickets yesterday. It is criminal how expensive it is to take your – and I know the Bark in the Park's a lot of people make fun of it, and I get why, right? It's like, why are you bringing your dog to a baseball game? Hey, they mean a lot to me. I like baseball. Don't judge me. Don't judge me. But when I saw how much it would cost to take me, my wife, and our 2 dogs to the game, guess how much it'd cost, Stone?
I mean, $100.
$124 to take me, my wife, 2 dogs to the game when I could get into the stadium with me and my wife for about $20. So I was like, maybe I'll do that. But while the show was going on, my father-in-law, he sent he's like, hey, I got 2 tickets to the Cubs game tonight with up in the party deck and free food and free drinks. And I was like, you kidding me? You kidding me? So that's what I'm going to do tonight. I actually was debating on even going to the game at all. I haven't been to a Cubs game yet this year, but now I'm going to get to go tonight. So shout out to Mr. Gordon on getting me some free tickets. All right, we have some more buy or sells. This time it is around the National Football League. Thursday Night Football is tonight. Buffalo Bills versus the Miami Dolphins. We're heading into week 3. So buy or sell around the NFL as we head into week 3. Stone?
Buy or sell. The Steelers are for real.
Man, they looked really good that week 1, didn't they? But maybe Aaron Rodgers looked like old Aaron Rodgers. He's taken a lot of hits, guys. I don't know if you've watched the Steelers play, but that old man, that fragile old man, is taking a lot of hits. And I just don't see how it's sustainable. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to sell that they're for real in the capacity of which I think that they can win a playoff game. Do I think they made the postseason? Absolutely. They got Aaron Rodgers. They got Mike Tomlin. They never go under 500. So I'm not going to sell that the Steelers are going to go, 9-8 or 10-7. They'll probably make the postseason. They'll probably lose by 40, as they do every single year. But I'm selling that they have a capacity to win a postseason game here in the American Football Conference. Sell, sell, sell. You buying this one, Stone?
I'm in complete agreement with you. We'll get into my NFL playoff predictions in a little bit, in about 20 minutes here on my show. But I had the Steelers making the playoffs. I still think they will, but I'm with you. They get in and they lose right away. Aaron Rodgers, he can still play, But at that age, with as bad as that offensive line is, Mike Tomlin hasn't been able to figure out that offensive line for, it feels like, 5+ years, really, definitely ever since Big Ben retired. And it's hard to imagine him getting through a full season and playing every single game. And if they have to go with their backup quarterbacks, they're nowhere near the team that they are with Aaron Rodgers as their quarterback. So I think they sneak into the playoffs, maybe get that last seed in the AFC, but they're not going to win a playoff game.
Yeah, I was just catching up on the chats, and they were making fun of. I said there might be a gas problem because the alarm kept going off, and they're like, Reed's got a gas problem. That's why everyone's leaving. Hey, there's a lot of things you can accuse me of. Being clean and not smelly is probably not one of them. All right, the next buy or sell is
Mike McDaniel without the S. As you were sending me these buy or sells, Reed, you did what everybody else in the media does and call him Mike McDaniels.
He does not have. There's only one. There's
Right.
not plural. It's
Exactly.
not plural. It's not
So,
possessive.
Mike McDaniel is the first coach fired this year. You buying or selling that?
I am buying this full stop. I think that they are, 2-touchdown underdogs tonight on Thursday Night Football. I think they will get embarrassed tonight by the Buffalo Bills. And, man, it's getting really bad there in a hurry. There was reports in the offseason about how weird their practice is, how soft of a team they looked. And, they have those intra-team scrimmages at practice sometimes, and the reports coming out of there is like, man, this Dolphins team does not look good. And they get blown out in week 1, and they have a players-only meeting, which, by the way, in the history of sport, I don't know if those have ever worked. A lot of you guys that have watched this show have been athletes in the past. I don't know if I get made fun of that all the time. Every players-only meeting I've ever been a part of has just been a complete waste of time. Maybe it's different at different levels, but every players-only meeting I've ever been at is a complete waste of time. It's players being like, oh, we got to change something, rah, 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 and it's just a fugazi. So those are never good. Yeah, I think that he probably won't have a job come Thanksgiving. Buying or selling?
I'm buying. We'll see. I don't know if they're going to fire him mid-season, but the idea of him returning next year I don't see as a likely possibility. Unfortunate, because I think what he can do offensively, some of the creativity is really impressive with Mike McDaniel, but the reality of the situation is you can't just be straight finesse in the National Football League. You got to have some strength. You got to have some physicality, and his teams have lacked that. That's why they've gotten off to these fast starts. Not this year, but the rest of the years he's been the head coach. They get off to these fast starts, and then they kind of just plummet, and it's a downhill spiral from there. So if it feels like he's going to get fired at some point, whether it's in the season or after the season, then he'll probably be back in San Francisco with Kyle Shanahan, similar to what Robert Saleh is doing after he got fired. And I'm sure he'll be really good at, if he's the run game coordinator or whatever he's doing over in San Francisco. That's kind of my prediction. But when you act the way he does and you're kind of quirky or whatever, that's great when you're winning. But if you're going to act like that and you're losing, your team has no discipline, and you've got locker room issues, it's just kind of a mess, and I'm not sure he can regain the locker room. He's probably going to be the first guy fired. I'm buying.
I saw a tweet about a week ago that was talking about this very. They're making fun of this system, and like Mike McDaniel got a lot of credit in the media because he kind of resembles kind of a sports writer, right? Like kind of where in a world in which a lot of football coaches are like Dan Campbell, very intense football guys, big imposing guys. Here was Mike McDaniel that was kind of a quirky, kind of nerdy almost in the way that he went about it. And this tweet went as follows: like, man, can you imagine losing by 35 points in an NFL football game, and Mike McDaniel walks in there and cracks a Marvel joke? Like, I mean, I couldn't imagine something going over worse in a locker room. But we'll see. I think that the only person that I could see competing with this. Can you see anybody else competing with Mike McDaniel to get fired first? Brian Daboll, if the Giants lose a lot of games?
Yeah, I feel like they got to give him a chance with Dart. So I would say McDaniel's probably on a shorter leash than Daboll. Daboll, of course, won a playoff game with Daniel Jones. I think that gives him a little leverage.
Yep. All right. So Brian Daboll, I think, is maybe the only guy that comes close. Put in the chat if you guys think anybody else is on the. I mean, Zac Taylor won't get fired midseason. Some people would say maybe Zac Taylor, but yeah.
I mean, Canales and Carolina.
Yeah, that's a.
That owner is just so impulsive and crazy.
Yeah, that's an explosive team.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess that could happen too. That would be. Yeah. Canales, Dable, Mike McDaniel. Those are the three. Next, buy or sell.
Buy or sell. This is the end of the Chiefs dynasty.
2 years ago, when Tom hosted this show, it was Tom, Casey, me, and Elliot. And every single week, Tom, Casey, Elliot would tell me that the Chiefs look terrible, that this isn't the same Chiefs team. And I would say, until I see them start losing, I'm going to continue to believe in Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. I held that last year where they looked the exact same. They won 15 games last year. So it was ugly every single game. It's pretty clear that they feel comfortable in those games. But you're like, I can't believe that this team is the end of it all until I start seeing them losing. Well, here we are in week 3 of the season. They've started 0-2. Do I think they'll make the postseason? Yeah, I think they'll be fine. But are they Super Bowl contenders anymore? I don't see it for the first time. I always said, like, I'm going to believe that they're Super Bowl contenders until, like, they literally don't go to the Super Bowl, which in the Patrick Mahomes era has happened exactly twice. To Tom Brady, his rookie year, and to Joe Burrow. Every year they've made the AFC Championship game. So until I saw them not make the Super Bowl, I was going to do it. I'm going to go ahead of schedule here, and I say, yes, this is the end of the Chiefs dynasty. This is the end of the Travis Kelce. They don't have enough weapons. Patrick Mahomes still looks really good. I think that defense is still pretty good. Really good even. But, man, I can't see them competing with the Eagles, with the Packers, with the Bills or the Ravens, to be honest with you. I still think they're a playoff team. I still think that they are I could see them winning a playoff game in the AFC. I don't see them going to the Super Bowl. I think their peak is maybe lucking into a win against the Bills or the Ravens and getting the AFC Championship game. But yeah, I'll call it. This is the end of the Chiefs dynasty. And a lot of fools have been made over the years of calling the end of the This is the end of the Patriots. And then they, rip off 3 more Super Bowl wins. This is the end of Tom Brady. Then he goes to Tampa Bay and wins one with a completely inept franchise. Then this is the end of the Chiefs. They've done it now for 2 years. I'm comfortable saying, yes, this is the end of the Chiefs dynasty. I am reserving the ability to change my opinion one time this year on that, though. At this very moment, I'm saying this is the end of the Chiefs dynasty. Stone?
I'm selling. I'm not ready to say that quite yet. And you brought up New England, right? They had that 10-year period where they didn't win a Super Bowl from 2004 to 2014 when they beat Seattle. And obviously they went to a couple in that stretch where they lost to the Giants, but I mean, to sit there and say, oh, the dynasty's over for that, yeah, they went 10 years without winning a Super Bowl, but I don't think the dynasty was over. And it's just hard to say when all Patrick Mahomes has done is go to the AFC Championship game. Until we see that consecutively for a few years, then, yeah, you can maybe say that. But he's still young. He still is going to have championships, in my opinion, in front of him. And look, it's going to change, right? This is just like phase 1 here with Travis Kelce. There's going to be a phase of Patrick Mahomes without Travis Kelce, and probably a phase with him without his head coach, Andy Reid, which obviously Brady in New England didn't have to deal with as Belichick was there the entirety of that run. But it just seems premature to say it. They lost 2 games last year. Yeah, they got blown out in the Super Bowl after that. But until they get knocked off, I don't think you can sit here and say, that the dynasty is over. Baltimore, for instance, feels like, I know you love or you think the Ravens are really, really good. I do too. But if you're sitting there in a playoff game, whether it be the wild card round or the divisional round, and it's Baltimore, Kansas City, are you absolutely 100% sure, oh, Baltimore's definitely going to win this game? No, they haven't been able to, get over that Kansas City hump yet to this point. And I think even with the lack of weaponry that Patrick Mahomes has right now, you feel pretty good if you're Kansas City about winning that football game. So I'm hesitant to say it's over yet.
Even if they played in Kansas City, the Bills or the Ravens, like say Kansas City gets a home game against those 2 teams, they'd be underdogs in both those scenarios. And if they're playing in Buffalo or Baltimore, I think they're 4 to 5 point underdogs, or right around there. So yeah, I don't know. Like they can win, but yeah, I think this is the end of it. This is the end. I think this is the end of the Chiefs. And they can rebuild. It's gonna be a new team. Patrick Mahomes just turned 30 yesterday. I feel like he feels like a lot older. He just turned 30, or maybe it was earlier this week. They've still got plenty of time, and Andy Reid doesn't look like he's on the doorstep of retiring either. He still seems like he's obsessed with football, and when you're winning, how could he not be? But for the time being, I think that this is the end of the current iteration of the Chiefs dynasty. The Patriots kind of had two different dynasties. I think this is the end of the current Chiefs dynasty. Maybe I'm wrong. Final one, I believe. No, we got two more.
Buy or sell, the NFC is better than the AFC.
Okay, so here's the thing. I'm an AFC guy. I don't know how much you guys as fans, like when I watch the American League in baseball as a National League guy who grew up in Cincinnati, who grew up a Cubs fan, when I watch the American League, it feels like I'm watching the opposition. It feels like I'm watching the enemy. I kind of, for whatever reason, get the same feeling when I watch the NFC play. Like when I'm watching the Eagles play, I gravitate towards the Bills or the Ravens or the Chiefs when they're playing these big games because I kind of want the AFC to be better. I don't know why. It seems silly, but I do. That's just where I'm at as a fan. Yesterday I was listening to a podcast, and they asked the question, is Jordan Love the best quarterback in the NFC? And the knee-jerk reaction is no. No way. Then you start thinking about it, and it's like, well, is he better than the current iteration of Matt Stafford? Close. Is he better than Jalen Hurts? It's close. Like Jordan Love has a legitimate argument to be the best quarterback in the NFC. Jaden Daniels is young, hasn't looked well. The Commanders, he's kind of hurt right now. Like he has a legitimate argument, probably a losing argument, but you could argue it that he's the best quarterback in the NFC. And in a league where it's still quarterback driven, and in a league that has the AFC having Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, a hurt Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, in a league where that's what's going on in the other conference, the AFC, it's hard for me to say that the NFC is better than the AFC. I think the NFC might have, I think they have two of the best three teams in the league, in the Eagles and the Packers. And if the Ravens lose another game, those teams will probably be my 1 and 2 best teams in the NFL. But I still think that the AFC is better than the NFC. So I'm selling.
Yeah, I think top to bottom, to me, clearly the NFC is better. So I guess, I hate to dance around this here, but, I would say the NFC definitely is better top to bottom. But as far as the top heaviness goes, I would take the AFC. If you just look at the AFC as a whole, like the Patriots, no good. Jets, no good. Dolphins, no good. Raiders, no good. Is anybody in the AFC South really that good? Indianapolis, obviously 2-0. Cleveland's not good. Like, there's a lot more bad teams in the AFC, but as you mentioned with the quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, and now Herbert and the Chargers are starting to enter that conversation there as well. So top to bottom, the NFC is better, but I think when you're just looking at the top and best teams, I would take the AFC. So I'm kind of dancing around the question a little bit.
Man, you think top to bottom, the NFC's better?
Yeah.
Who's the worst? The worst team in the league is in the AFC, the Fins. The Fins are probably the worst team in the league. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I'd have to look at the standings.
The Jets are bad. The Browns are bad.
Yeah.
Titans are bad.
I guess you're right. It's just in a league in which my whole argument was based off in the NFL, where I still think quarterback play is king, where I still think it is what leads everything. When the 5 best quarterbacks are all in the AFC, It's hard for me to go the other way. Yeah. Simple as that. Now, I think the NFC might have better coaching. Like LaFleur. Andy Reid is still over here. But who's the second best coach in the AFC?
Well,
Jim
let's
Harbaugh.
Get to our final.
Oh, yeah. Right, final one in the final minute of the show.
Yeah. Buy or sell. Jim Harbaugh is the best coach in the NFL.
Buy.
Wow.
I'm buying this.
Wow.
He hasn't had the success that Andy Reid has had. He hasn't had the success that many coaches have had in the NFL. Reminder, he's only coached in the NFL this is his 6th year in the NFL. Jim Harbaugh has coached as long in the NFL as Zac Taylor has. Think about that. I think he coached 4 years for the 49ers because that was kind of his MO everywhere he goes. San Diego, 4 years. Stanford, 4 years. 49ers, 4 years. Then it was longer in Michigan. So this is his 6th year in the NFL. And he's missed the postseason once. He's been to 2 NFC. Has he been to 2 Super Bowl? No, he went to 2 NFC championships, 1 Super Bowl. If the Chargers win the Super Bowl this year or go to the Super Bowl, this will be a much bigger question than it is here in week 3. and I'm going to go ahead, get ahead of the 8 ball, and I'm going to say I'm buying Jim Harbaugh as the best coach in the NFL.
Reed, come on. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. I mean, we just talked about all the AFC championships Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid have gone to consecutively, right? And they still went to the Super Bowl last year. I get they got blown out, but all that Andy Reid has done, Andy Reid obviously won in Philadelphia. No, he wasn't able to quite get over the hump with Donovan McNabb, but Andy Reid clearly the best coach in the NFL to this point. And then I still think I'm taking probably McVay and Shanahan over Harbaugh. Harbaugh's great. He will win a Super Bowl with Justin Herbert. I have no problem saying that. But to say he's the best coach in the NFL just after a 2-0 start, didn't even win a playoff game last year, I think you've been listening to a little too much Colin Cowherd.
We will see. Let me ask this question, though. If you don't think he's the best coach in the NFL, if you could pick any coach right now to start your team with in the National Football League, who are you taking?
You have to. I think the answer is McVay.
Okay.
Just because of his age and the success that he's already had and his offensive brilliance.
Would Harbaugh be too?
Well, I mean, if you're taking age into consideration, no.
Okay.
He wouldn't be. I would probably.
I mean, let's not act like Jim Harbaugh's 70. He's what, mid-50s? I don't know his exact age. He's not. Know. Is he in his 60s? He played until like 2000. So 25 years ago, he's mid-30s. He's probably right around 60.
61.
61.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to get 10 years out of him at the minimum. If I was starting a team right now, and I've dipped into the Stone Shield show for too long already.
That's all right.
If I was starting a team right now, I think Jim Harbaugh would be my coach because of what I've seen him do at San Diego, Stanford, 49ers, Michigan, and now in Los Angeles with the Chargers. He's a winner. He's a winner. It's just what he is. So, yeah, we'll revisit this at the end of the year. Yeah. I think there's a path in which, the Chargers win a game in Buffalo, they win a game in Baltimore, and we're like, is Jim Harbaugh the best coach in the league? And I think there's also every coach in the NFL, and this is the final take I'll have on the show before I wrap up and go over to Stone Show. Every coach in the NFL throughout its history has kind of been linked to one guy, one quarterback, right? Bill Washington, Montana, Bill Belichick, Tom Brady, Shula Marino, Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes. I think Justin Herbert's that guy for Jim Harbaugh. I think when we get done with the Jim Harbaugh story, we will be linking, they will be talked about the same way. Sean Payton, Drew Brees, same way. I think it's going to be Jim Harbaugh, Justin Herbert, when in 15 years when Jim Harbaugh hangs up the whistle and says, I can't coach no more. I think we will be talking about, man, what a career he had, and it's thanks in part to Justin Herbert. All right, Reds play tonight against the Chicago Cubs. Yesterday the show was, I deemed the Reds done for the 800th time on Chatterbox Airways. I think Ellie did it a few times. I've done it a few times. I'm sure Trace has done it. I don't know if Kirby ever has, but pretty much everyone that's been on these airways have, the season's done. It's over. The Reds are done. And here they are, a week to play. They play two really good teams in the Chicago Cubs and the Milwaukee Brewers. Cubs don't have a whole lot to play for. They clinched a postseason spot yesterday. They are 5 back in the division. They are 5 up on the Padres with a week to play. They've got to beat the Padres out in the wild card race to have a home playoff. So, the Cubs, I don't think are going to be taking it too hard this weekend against the Reds. So, I'll be at the game tonight. Maybe I'll see some of you guys. Thank you so much. I will not be on the show tomorrow. I'll see you all on Sunday. Smoke Justice, 1 p.m. Be there and or be a square. Giving away a Joe Burrow jersey. Watch along with the Bengals. Hoo day. We'll see you after we are 3-0.
All right, here we go. Welcome into the Stone Shield Show here on a Thursday, September 18th. Appreciate everybody hanging out with us here this morning. Got plenty to talk about here on today's show. Obviously, Cincinnati Bengals conversation. A football game being played tonight in the National Football League between the Miami Dolphins and the Buffalo Bills. Some question marks as far as whether or not that game will be very competitive or not. But short week, anything could happen, and it's a divisional matchup. Certainly one that's been dominated by the Buffalo Bills over the course of the Josh Allen era. But Dolphins-Bills tonight. We'll have a preview of that game a little bit as well. We'll talk Bengals to start out today's show. Injury updates. The Vikings are pretty banged up. Cincinnati's got a couple of guys that have been limited in practice or did not practice. We'll touch on that. Jake Browning conversation. Paul Dehner Jr. has a great piece up on The Athletic, a conversation with Andrew Whitworth, kind of how we got here with the Cincinnati Bengals. We'll break down some of that and why it's kind of a lazy narrative to just fully blame the offensive line for the Joe Burrow injury histories. Obviously, Burrow's been hurt way too many times, and the offensive line has not been good. But again, it hasn't been necessarily because the Bengals haven't tried to address the offensive line. They have, but they haven't done a good job of it. Also on today's show, we're going to be breaking down my NFL playoff teams. Now, we're going to be using the honor system a little bit here as it relates to that because obviously we've played 2 weeks in the National Football League. I made these prior to the NFL season. Obviously, prior to week 1, we didn't start on the show. This is week 2 of the show, almost done with 2 weeks here at the Stone Shield Show and Off the Bench coming back. But just got to use the honor system here. Got to believe me. I do have an 0-2 team that is my division winner for one of the divisions. So I'm going to be sticking with that. Going to be breaking down who all I have in the postseason for the NFL. Going to be breaking down those matchups, who I have winning and who I have in the Super Bowl. Again, this is prior to 2 weeks of NFL football. So the team that I have winning the Super Bowl, spoiler alert, their quarterback, he has turf toe, and he's not going to be playing until at best late in the year, and he might not be playing at all. So that shows you that certainly using the honor system here, and I have not tweaked these at all since a couple of weeks in the NFL season. So we're going to be breaking that down, spending a little time on Bills and Dolphins. By the way, I have our best bets of the weekend coming on tomorrow's show. Don't have necessarily a pick in the game, have a lean one way, but wouldn't, suggest it being one of the best bets of the weekend. Reds won yesterday, was a must-win game. Reality of the situation, they lose yesterday. You can pretty much write them off, but I mean, as the Cowboys said a couple of weeks ago, saying the Reds are just like cockroaches, you just can't kill them. That proves true once again yesterday in St. Louis. Brady Singer helping bring home the dub, and Spencer Steer showing up in a big way offensively for the Cincinnati Reds. Back in town tonight. Final homestand of the season, critical games on the horizon, obviously several really important ones with the Chicago Cubs. We'll spend a little bit of time talking about the Cincinnati Reds, and if we have time to close out today's show, J.J. McCarthy. Is he a bust? I think so. But we'll break that down if we have some time at the end of today's show. But let's start with the Cincinnati Bengals, and let's start with some injuries here on today's show. A couple of people that popped up on the injury report for Wednesday yesterday. Dylan Fairchild has a shoulder. He was on the injury report, but he was a full participant in practice for Cincinnati. Shamar Stewart has the ankle. He did not practice, and he apparently is week to week, according to Zac Taylor. That's a big blow, right? Obviously, all the news and the attention went to Joe Burrow after last week's game against the Jacksonville Jaguars, but no Shamar Stewart. That's a problem, because then all of a sudden you look at your pass rush and you're right back to where you were last season, where it's just Trey Hendrickson, and then you have Osai, and then you have Miles Murphy that hasn't really been able to do much. Cam Sample obviously back, got juked out pretty bad by Basil Tootin, the rookie running back for the Jaguars, but not necessarily his fault, 1-1 and kind of an open field situation with a speedy running back. But Cam Sample, you hope he can kind of turn the page and find a way to get some pressure on opposing quarterbacks. Cam Taylor-Britt was limited with a hamstring injuries for all football players, also really particularly those DBs, never a good thing. Those things tend to linger for a couple of weeks or linger throughout the entire seasons. In large part can happen with hamstrings. So close eye on Cam Taylor-Britt. Thought he responded in a really big way. It looked like he kind of got demoted to that third, I guess, cornerback, because when they would go to 3 linebackers in the game against Jacksonville, DJ Turner would still stay on the field. But Cam Taylor-Britt did a tremendous job in that game against against the Jaguars. Had a couple of big PBUs, one in the end zone, one at the end of the first half that prevented Jacksonville from scoring points. He needs to continue building and heading in the right direction. But if he's not able to be out there at all with the hamstring, I think he'll play, barring a setback. But if he's not able to get as many snaps as we are used to seeing from CTB, that obviously means Josh Newton, who's had kind of a shaky start to this season, I guess. Hasn't played a ton of snaps, obviously, but we talked about when we were breaking down the Bengals cornerback room prior to the season, all these guys are going to have to play. It's just the nature of cornerback, and especially with not having some super lockdown guys. Like Al Golden's going to continue to rotate through that room, and we're going to see that, and we're going to see that against Minnesota as well. Logan Wilson also with an ankle injury. He was limited in practice yesterday. We'll see how things transpire for him as we progress throughout the rest of the week. No Logan Wilson obviously would be a massive blow to the Cincinnati Bengals defense. Wears that headset in his helmet, obviously has the communication there with Al Golden. Does a tremendous job calling the shots. Looks really good through a couple of games. Looks quicker, looks faster. No Logan Wilson obviously would be a problem. And that's kind of what we got into last year, right? Where it's like, okay, for a while there, Logan Wilson was out there, but clearly not 100%. And some people, for instance, like Joe Burrow at 70% or 60% is probably better than Jake Browning, right? Amarius Mims at 60% is probably better than Cody Ford, right? Well, if Logan Wilson's at 75%, is that better than Barrett Carter? I don't know, especially after what we saw last year. Wilson had the knee. He was playing through it. Lacked speed, lacked quickness, and opposing quarterbacks were continuously targeting him over the middle and finding completions when they went to Logan Wilson. So we'll see. The ankle's certainly something to monitor. Flipping things over to the Minnesota side, Christian Darrisaw, he blew out his knee last year, hasn't played yet this year, but he was a full participant in practice earlier this week, and it looks like things are trending in the direction of Darrisaw starting this game for Minnesota. Again, he's one of the best left tackles in the National Football League, and coming off a serious knee injury, ACL, MCL, that would be a big boost for Minnesota. Ryan Kelly, who they brought in, also has a concussion that he suffered in the fourth quarter of last week's game, so he's kind of up in the air as far as whether or not he's going to be able to play. But Minnesota has allocated a lot of resources to their offensive line, $60.5 million on their offensive line, the fourth highest in the NFL, and only the Titans have allowed more sacks this season than the Minnesota Vikings. Is that coupled a little bit with, a rookie quarterback maybe holding on to the football too long? Perhaps. But they've also given up the fifth highest pressure rate in the NFL, and that's something that's very significant for the Cincinnati Bengals. We'll break down more of a preview tomorrow, some keys to victory for Cincinnati, but they're going to have to find a way to rush the passer and rush Carson Wentz, a guy that hasn't played a ton of football recently, and getting him off his mark certainly will be very crucial for Cincinnati. But the Vikings, they really allocated top-of-the-line resources. They brought in Will Fries in free agency. He is, he was viewed as one of the top guards in the market this season in free agency. He had the serious injury last year. He's out there. Things haven't necessarily worked out, I guess, to this point that Minnesota was hoping for with him. Donovan Jackson, they take him, first-round pick out of Ohio State. Has he necessarily performed up to what they had hoped? Probably not there as well. And also they've had a rotation of guys as they haven't really been able to stay healthy along the offensive line with them. Again, Darrisaw coming back, that is massive for them, and we'll see if he can kind of mitigate some of the stuff that Trey Hendrickson is able to do for the Bengals from a pass rush perspective. But Hendrickson and those guys, they got to come ready to play on the road in Minnesota against that Brian Flores defense. I don't know if you can necessarily go out there and expect Jake Browning and this Bengals offense to score lots of points. The defense is going to have to be a lot better than they were last week, that is for sure. And they're going to also have to find ways to create turnovers. Pressuring Carson Wentz is going to be their number one key to victory here in this game. They kind of have an offensive line for Minnesota that's been dedicated, and a lot of money has been placed on that offensive line. A lot of resources have been placed on their offensive line, but it hasn't really worked out for them to this point. And I think the Bengals are going to have some opportunity, and guys like Joseph Osai and maybe even Miles Murphy, especially with the injury to Shamar Stewart, are going to have an opportunity to really wreak havoc in this football game. And I think that will go a long way in deciding the outcome of this football game as well. All right, let's kind of revisit some conversation around the Joe Burrow injury, something unfortunately that we're going to be doing a lot, as is everybody that talks about the Cincinnati Bengals. Just kind of the reality of the situation. But Paul Dehner Jr. of The Athletic, he had a nice piece with Andrew Whitworth, and Whitworth kind of made the point that it's kind of just a lazy narrative to blame the offensive line and the organization. Really, nobody has had kind of more of a tumultuous time with the Cincinnati Bengals than Andrew Whitworth. He's gone in detail in the past about how his contract negotiations went down, the end of his run here in Cincinnati, just a disaster, right? One of the best tackles, if not the best tackle in the National Football League. This is a guy that's going to be a Hall of Famer, absolutely no doubt about that. He ends up going to the Rams and, of course, ends up winning a Super Bowl against his former team, the Cincinnati Bengals. But the Bengals have tried, as we've talked about, to address their offensive line. They just haven't done a good job of it. Mims, of course, the latest top-of-the-line pick. Fairchild, a guy that they've taken. They've signed guys in free agency. Kappa, of course. Karras, who now they've extended twice. We've talked about all those things. But a point that Whitworth made that I thought was really interesting was this. When you look at the Andy Dalton run here in Cincinnati, and it doesn't get talked about enough, because they didn't win any playoff games, right? But there were some really, really good teams with Andy Dalton there where they won a ton of regular season games and were looked at as a team that maybe could make a little bit of noise in the playoffs. Obviously, there's, Tom Brady's, Peyton Manning's of the world. Those guys were going to be in the way there. But the fact that they didn't win a singular playoff game, obviously a letdown. But the reason those teams were solid was Andy Dalton good at facilitating, kind of being that point guard, getting the ball to A.J. Green, guys like that in space. They had some ability to run the football on the ground as well. But make no mistake, Andy Dalton wasn't even close to where Joe Burrow is as a quarterback. But those teams foundationally were built in the trenches, and that's what allowed them to compete, especially in the AFC North. When you take a look at some of the guys that they drafted and developed defensively there, that interior of Geno Atkins and Carlos Dunlap. Again, the end of the Dunlap era here was a disaster. It was a mess, what have you. But when Dunlap was in his prime, he was really good, as was Geno Atkins. Those guys held things down in the trenches for you, both of which guys that you drafted and developed. Similarly, on the offensive line, you had success with guys like Clint Bowling, guys like Kevin Zeitler, guys like Andre Smith. They were there for a really long time, and that provided a stable offensive line for Andy Dalton. And another point that Whitworth made was this. When you talk about trench play in the NFL, yeah, you can bang on the Bengals. Oh, they didn't bring in, a perennial guard type of talent in free agency. Well, teams in the NFL aren't letting really good guards get to free agency. They're paying them. A lot of stuff in the trenches you see in this league is homegrown talent that you draft and that you develop and that you pay. Lots of times on the offensive line and the defensive line, you're not going to get a ton of, crazy free agents. Orlando Brown Jr. was an exception, right? The fact he was on the open market, kind of a crazy situation. The Bengals, out of character, stepped in and brought him in and paid him a chunk contract. And obviously that was something that surprised me and something that was very un-Bengal-like. But the reality of the situation is this. If you have a really good defensive lineman or offensive lineman, you're not going to let him hit free agency. You're going to pay him and have him stick around for the foreseeable future throughout his prime as a football player in the National Football League. And when you look what the Bengals have done in their trenches, they have not done a good job, and some of it dates back to the Andy Dalton era. But besides, Bowling and Zeitler and Smith, those guys were all hits. But think about the guys that weren't hits. Billy Price, who you took in the first round in 2019, disaster, right? You spent a first-round pick on Jonah Williams, who was solid, but he didn't get a second contract here in Cincinnati. You let him go. Michael Jordan, obviously one of the worst picks in recent memory, disaster. 2021. You allocated a second-round pick to Jackson Carman. That completely blew up in your face because he absolutely stunk up the joint and really wasn't even given many opportunities to play because he was just so bad. And when he was out there in the few opportunities that he got to play, he was really bad. Cordell Volson, right? He was a fourth-round pick. Yeah, he was suitable, I guess, for a little bit, but ultimately, of course, he got hurt, but, he wasn't somebody that necessarily really panned out there as well. When it comes to extending guys that they drafted, the only guy that the Bengals drafted and signed to a second deal along their offensive line was Clint Bowling, a fourth-round pick in 2011. We are in 2025, and there hasn't been an offensive lineman that they have drafted and given a second contract. That's a disaster. That can't happen. The Bengals, for whatever reason, have not been able to draft and develop well along their offensive line. Now, Amarius Mims is going to be an exception, I think. All right? I think Amarius Mims, if he can stay healthy, he's a guy that they're going to pay a second contract, and he will break that trend. Hopefully Dylan Fairchild is in the same boat. We'll see. But these, ideas that you're going to bring in these free agents along your offensive line and they're going to do a great job playing offensive line for you, it's just not the reality of the situation. You look at the Eagles, a lot of those guys, they draft, they develop. Nobody has a better offensive line right now in the National Football League than Philadelphia. So, yeah, you can bang on the offensive line for not being as good. Yeah, you can bang on the organization for not drafting well along the offensive line. Reality is there's multiple people to blame. And for you to just say, yep, these 5 guys that are out there right now or that were out there when Joe Burrow had his toe injury, that's the reason why he's hurt. Whitworth points this out. It's just kind of a lazy narrative, right? There's multiple reasons why this has happened. And also Whitworth has talked about that maybe we'll see Joe Burrow alter his game. Whitworth and Burrow are very close. They have been for a long time. LSU guys, obviously. And, Whitworth even pointed out you might have to see him adjust how he plays as a quarterback in the National Football League. He alluded to Matthew Stafford, who, of course, was the guy that he played with and won a Super Bowl championship with. Stafford, as he got older and took a lot of hits in Detroit, if it wasn't there, he kind of threw it away. Right? He would dirt some balls, instead of taking big shots, instead of trying to extend plays. And we've talked about on this show before, if Joe Burrow changes to that kind of quarterback, is he one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL still? I don't know. I think so, just because he's so accurate with the football. But part of what makes him great is his extendability and his ability to create off script. But after all these injuries, he might have to alter that playing style. Because I can assure you, Joe Burrow, just from within the pocket and throwing balls away when it isn't there, is way better than any backup quarterback that you could possibly have. And that's no disrespect to Jake Browning whatsoever. But let's transition this conversation a little bit here to Jake Browning. It's been a roller coaster of emotions, right, for Bengals fans over the course of the past couple of days. I documented my emotions, how, frustration, sadness, anger, all those types of things. Mainly sadness, though, to be honest with you, that Burrow is banged up and that he is hurt. But, look, you still have the entire NFL season ahead of you, right? And a lot of football fans, they long for this, right? Now, people like me, I'm lucky I'm into baseball, I'm into basketball, so that all gets me through to football season. But there are some people, some Bengals fans, that are just Bengals fans, and that's really the only sport that they tap into. Well, now it's here. And there are some that believe, well, now it's over because Joe Burrow is no longer the starting quarterback for this team after his injury. The Bengals are still going to be an interesting team. And they're still a team that can bring the fan base happiness. Now, are they still in a position to win a world title? If Burrow doesn't come back, no. That can't happen. But that doesn't mean it can't be a fun ride here this year, and it doesn't mean guys can prove their worth on this football team. It doesn't mean they can't be involved in some crazy football games, some big-time wins, and even may possibly make the postseason as well. Again, we wouldn't have that positive twist on it if they weren't 2-0, but hey, Bengals have yet to lose a football game yet. We'll see if that remains the case after Sunday in Minnesota. But Jake Browning has an opportunity here to do good work and to, really make a name for himself here in this situation. There's not really a better spot you could be in as a backup quarterback than to have T. Higgins, than to have Jamar Chase, have an offensive coach calling the plays for you, and have a 2-0 record. And, of course, in large part, or not in large part, but obviously Browning has contributed to this 2-0 record with his performance against Jacksonville. But he is in a borderline perfect situation here. There aren't sky-high expectations. I think all those expectations when Joe Burrow was ruled out and was getting helped off the field on Sunday kind of evaporated, kind of went away, right? Nobody nationally expects this team to do anything, and I think those of us here in the city of Cincinnati, maybe we expect them to make the playoffs still and just have a chance for if Joe Burrow can come back, but it's not like, oh, you got to go win the Super Bowl, Jake Browning. No, you're a backup quarterback. It's just, the reality of the situation. I'm interested to see how the offense changes with Jake Browning. We saw it even the second half against Jacksonville, how much it changed. Just from when Joe Burrow was the starter to then in the second half, of course, when Jake Browning was the guy. You saw some more stuff under center. You saw some more 3-step drops as opposed to 5-step drops. And, look, I get it. Burrow likes to spread it all out. He likes to take the 5-step drops and sling it all over the field. That's tough on the offensive line. That's how Cincinnati plays. That's how Cincinnati has won. I have no problem with them doing that, but you're going to see that change with Jake Browning. Obviously, they're going to do everything in their power to keep him out of harm's way because if something happens to him, they're really cooked. All right, but you're going to see him do some more stuff from under center. I believe when those 7 games he was the starter, you saw the Bengals in shotgun like 71% of the time, 73% of the time. I don't know the number exactly off the top of my head, but when Joe Burrow's out there, it's over 90% of the time. That's going to be a drastic switch. Again, maybe we'll see that switch when Joe Burrow comes back, and we'll see him do some more under center stuff. But he's got the weaponry around him. He's got the skill pieces around him. They have to do a better job of running the football, right? We all love Chase Brown and what he's capable of doing, but the Bengals have not been able to run the ball besides the first couple of drives against Cleveland. Haven't been able to do anything on the ground. That's got to change with the backup quarterback, absolutely. But there's still reason to be optimistic and still reason to find happiness in the Cincinnati Bengals this year, even with Jake Browning as the quarterback. Everything is ahead of him, right? This isn't a situation where it's like, oh, yeah, we're going to need you for a couple games. No, you're the starter for the foreseeable future, for the next 3 months minimum. You are the guy. And I just think that shift in mindset is something that really is going to help elevate Jake Browning's performance. Being the backup, it's tough, right? It's great in terms of, oh, you get to make millions of dollars and not get hit. Sign me up, right? But as far as mentally staying checked in, staying locked in when you're not the starter, and certainly when you're getting minimum reps as well. And for a guy like Jake Browning, who didn't play a single series at all last year in the regular season, how is he going to get better with minimal reps and no game time? It's a tough situation for him, right? Well, now we're going to be able to see exactly how much he has improved since 2023. I think Browning's a guy that he played high-level high school football. He played high-level college football. Of course, got Washington to the college football playoff one of those years. The best quarterback in Washington Husky football history is Jake Browning. And he's got toughness. He's got a chip on his shoulder. He's got, good football acumen. He seems to always, have an answer when, the defense presents, a challenging situation to him. And that's certainly something that he's going to have to deal with Brian Flores. But he's had success against Minnesota in the past. So I would just encourage everybody to give Jake Browning a chance, give him an opportunity. The expectations naturally have to shift. With no Joe Burrow, you can't sit there and say, yep, we're expecting to win a Super Bowl. Now, if Browning puts you in a position where you can get, into the playoffs and Burrow's coming back, put those expectations right back on and let's go. I'm totally with that. But Browning has a lot, as an uphill hill to climb. But he's got a lot of skill players around him, and he's in a pretty good situation here with limited expectations, and there's still plenty of reason to believe that this season can be fulfilling for you as a Cincinnati Bengal fan, and there's still reason to believe that this team can make some noise with Jake Browning. We'll see. It all starts on Sunday with the game against Minnesota. Appreciate everybody stopping by the show here. As always, if you haven't hit that subscribe button, make sure you do that right now. It really helps us out. YouTube.com/ChatterboxSports. On our way to 19,000 subscribers here at the channel. Also, we will have podcasts up after our shows. The Off the Bench podcast, that goes up, and also my show, the Stone Shield Show. You can get a podcast up for that. So if you don't want to watch, that's totally fine. If you can only listen in your car, on the way home from work, on your way to work the following day, that's totally fine. You can do that. Subscribe to the podcast. We appreciate it. Also, we have clips out on YouTube that go out later in the day from different segments that we do here on this show and Off the Bench as well. So if you want that visual, you can check that on YouTube, and you'll see as time progresses, we will do a better job of getting social media clips up, here week 2 of the show. We're still obviously in the very beginning stages here. Lots of stuff we need to work through. But at some point, you're going to see a lot more clips on social media. That certainly will help get the word out there to more people of what exactly we're doing here at Off the Bench and at my show here, the Stone Shield Show. But let's transition here away from the Cincinnati Bengals a little bit, but even in this next conversation, we definitely will mention the Cincinnati Bengals. Everybody that has this job where they go on, whether it be YouTube, the radio, or the television set, and, predict, okay, these are all the teams that are going to make the playoffs, and these are, who the wild card teams are going to be. This is going to be the conference championship games and the Super Bowl winner. Everybody obviously does that prior to the season starting, but just kind of based on our schedule. We didn't begin our show till after week 1 anyway. There's been plenty of stuff to talk about with the Cincinnati Bengals and, of course, Joe Burrow here. But I thought today would be a good day to break down who exactly my playoff teams are in the AFC and the NFC and my predictions there as well. Now, I made these, again, mentioned this at the top of the show. We're just operating off the honor system here. I had this all written down prior to week 1 of the National Football League season, and I have not adjusted based off what we've seen in week 2. There are some things that look like really good predictions. There are some that look like really bad predictions, and we'll break it down here on today's show. Let's start with the AFC. At the number 1 overall seed, I have the Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen. In a lot of ways, it feels like their year. Allen, he's coming off, is an MVP season last year, his best year in the NFL. Another year in Buffalo as the guy. He's got a weak division in which he's operating with, right? It's not like he's got Belichick in New England still there causing issues. Yeah, I think Vrabel's going to do a fine job of building that organization. Miami's obviously a dumpster fire, and the Jets probably always will be a dumpster fire. So he has the beneficiary of playing in a weak division, clearly the best quarterback in that division, and I would argue has the best head coach right now. I think Vrabel could probably unseat McDermott, but the Bills are in a really good spot. Bills obviously have looked really good the first 2 weeks. Defensive question marks, no doubt, in what they did against Buffalo. Clean that up against the Jets, obviously a lesser opponent. But I view Buffalo as a team that's going to win a ton of football games. They're going to win their division, no problem. Wouldn't be surprised if they went 6-0 in their division, to be completely honest with you. And I've got them penciled in as the number 1 overall seed in the AFC. The 2 seed I have is the Baltimore Ravens, winning the AFC North. Again, these first 2 weeks, I made these before the NFL season began, but Lamar Jackson looks like he's right back to possibly winning another MVP. He looks terrific, looks great from within the pocket. You have question marks from Baltimore defensively. They played better, obviously, against Cleveland, who's one of the worst teams in the NFL, so not really much you can take from that. But the Baltimore Ravens, as long as Harbaugh and Lamar Jackson is there and Lamar Jackson is upright and healthy, they're going to win a ton of games. But how they're evaluated, similar to how Buffalo is going to be evaluated here throughout the course of the next few years, is how they perform in the postseason and how they perform more specifically than that against the Kansas City Chiefs in the postseason as well. Lots of good pieces on Baltimore. They're going to be an issue for the Cincinnati Bengals. They're going to be an issue for everybody they face this year. Some concern about the blowing leads late. A lot of it is they have a lot of leads, but there is cause for concern there, especially with the team that hasn't been able to get over the hump in the postseason. There's some concern for that, but I think Baltimore wins the North now with no Joe Burrow, wins the North with no problem probably, and ultimately secures that number 2 overall seat. I've got the Chargers winning the AFC West. Year 2 of Harbaugh, have them at the 3 seed. Year 2 of Harbaugh, Herbert through a couple of games. Again, I'm going to say this a million times, and you're probably like, Stone, we get it, stop. But before the NFL season, these were my predictions. Chargers, defensively, they're really good. They draft really well. They develop really well. They're so tough. They need to run the football a little bit better, which I think Harbaugh will get that figured out. Hampton threw a couple of games, thought he was really going to burst on the scene and look like a really solid running back. He's definitely underperformed through 2 games. I think Harbaugh will get that figured out. Also, you got Najee Harris in that backfield for Los Angeles as well. No Rashawn Slater is big. Obviously, one of their bookend tackles. Missing him is a problem, but Joe Alt certainly has done a terrific job, and guys that have filled in along the offensive line. Mekhi Becton, obviously, now there. He was with Philly last year and helped them win a world championship. Herbert, I always viewed him as, one of the top quarterbacks in this league. He's had the turmoil and the turnover with head coaches. He had it even at Oregon, and now he's had it here with the Chargers now on his 3rd head coach. But Harbaugh clearly is the right guy to be leading this football team. And, the toughness, the discipline, the arm strength, the ability to escape, extend plays, the legs. Herbert checks all the boxes. Now he finally has a good coach, and the organization now feels stable. And, I think they take over that spot for this year, not necessarily for the foreseeable future, but I think they best Kansas City here this year and win the division, had them at the 3 seed. And this was the one that I probably would change now, but I'm not going to. I've got the Houston Texans winning the South. I thought C.J. Stroud was going to take a step in the right direction after taking a step in the wrong direction last year in year 2. The offensive line was dreadful last year, and it's seemingly just as bad, maybe even worse this year. Did not expect that to be the case. Sometimes you have that, though, with defensive head coaches. They really struggle to figure out the offensive line. DeMeco Ryans does a great job. He's a great leader. He's got a great culture. But the offensive line has not been good these past 2 years for Houston. We'll see if they can rebound from that. They can't run the football whatsoever, and they really can't help C.J. Stroud out much. We'll see if they get that turned around. Indianapolis, obviously, has been the surprise of the NFL through 2 weeks at this point. But before the season, I had Houston being that 4 seed and winning the South. All right, 3 playoff teams here in the AFC at the 5 seed. Kansas City. Even after this 0-2 starts, I don't feel any worse about this prediction, to be completely honest with you. I think Kansas City, with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, they're always going to be a playoff team. That's just kind of the reality. You can put up a bunch of garbage men out there probably along the rest of their team or the rest of their offense, and Mahomes will find a way to get it done and advance to the postseason. They're not going to win as many games this year as they're used to doing, obviously, but they're going to make the playoffs, and they're still going to be a threat. Wouldn't be surprised if they won a playoff game or 2. Wouldn't be surprised at all if they even made a couple of upsets and ended up in the Super Bowl. That's just kind of how it goes with Kansas City. Cincinnati is who I have as the 6th seed in these playoffs, and obviously this was with the anticipation that Joe Burrow would be the guy. Not going to back off it yet, especially if Burrow has a chance to come back. But Bengals at 6. Defense is taking a step in the right direction. They got skill guys. They got a head coach that I believe in. And really the thing for them was just get off to a fast start. Obviously, if Joe Burrow was out there, I don't think anybody would – I think they'd be a lock for the playoffs, to be completely honest with you, after a 2-0 start. Burrow no longer there, but Browning has a 2-0 record to work with and has everybody else out there, right? All the skill guys out there with him, and we'll see. But I had the Bengals being a wild card team and also had the Steelers being a wild card team as well. It was my prediction that there would be 3 teams in the AFC that ultimately made the postseason. And that's what I'm sticking with here. I do have reservations as far as the offensive line of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Mike Tomlin has not been able to figure out the offensive line. Kind of alluded to it with DeMeco Ryans of Houston, right? But defensive coaches, they really struggle with the offensive line. Tomlin's great culture guy. His teams always play hard. They're really tough. They're really physical. He always has a winning record. He always makes the playoffs. But his offensive line's been bad for a long time. And with a guy that's an old man out there playing quarterback, that's an issue. I've got my reservations as far as Aaron Rodgers making it through the entirety of a season here in 2025, through a couple of games. Obviously, still have that 1 win, but he's been hit way too many times. And that's not something he's going to be able to withstand throughout the entirety of an NFL season if that doesn't get cleaned up. But, again, before the year, had Pittsburgh getting in at that 7 seed. So that means the Bills get the bye, and the matchups based on these seedings would be this: Texans, Chiefs, Bengals, Chargers, Steelers, and Ravens. Had the Chiefs taking down the Texans on the road, had the Bengals taking down the Chargers on the road, and had the Ravens taking down the Steelers at home. All of those teams advancing to the divisional round. Just any situation where the Chiefs don't make the playoffs and don't win a playoff game is going to surprise me. Now, we'll see. I could be back here on Monday morning and say, I'm changing my mind, because if they lose to the Giants, my mind very well could change. But I don't anticipate them having any issues on Sunday night on the road. I think they win big on Sunday and get their season right back on the right track. Then the divisional round would be Bills and Bengals, Chiefs and Ravens as your final 4 teams. I had the Bengals going to Buffalo and picking up a victory, and also had the Baltimore Ravens finally getting over the hump and beating the Kansas City Chiefs. They just have better talent. They have better talent on the football field. They've obviously struggled against Kansas City in the playoffs, had opportunities even at home to beat them. I think they get over the hump this year. And then I had Bengals, Ravens, Bengals going on the road and beating Baltimore as a wild card team. 3 straight road wins for the Bengals. Call me a homer. That's fine. Again, this was before the year with Joe Burrow. That's what I had. That was my prediction. The Bengals get to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl. That was my prediction. With, obviously I'm a Cincinnati guy. Obviously some people are laughing, rolling their eyes at that. That's totally fine. But with Joe Burrow coming back and the weaponry coming back, it was my belief that Cincinnati would hoist the Lombardi Trophy at the end of the year. So that's the AFC side. Let's venture over to the NFC side. Packers, 1 seed. They've been 1 on my power rankings now. They're really, really good. There's a lot of youth. That's fine. I think that's probably a good thing. To be honest with you, more of a good thing than a bad thing. Great head coach, great defensive coordinator, great play caller, obviously, in the floor, great quarterback in Jordan Love, great defense. Do they have that wide receiver 1? Nope, but they have lots of capable targets. Great tight end, Tucker Kraft. Offensive line, solid there as well. Zach Tom, obviously, banged up. They need him to come back, but Packers are clearly, to me, the best team in the National Football League. I had them even before this year started as the 1 seed and having that bye for the first round of the playoffs. 2 seed, I have the defending world champion Philadelphia Eagles. A lot of people came back, and Howie Roseman did a tremendous job building his roster as he typically does. Jalen Hurts remains one of the most underrated, or probably the most underrated quarterback in the National Football League, even after winning the Super Bowl this past year. Hurts, great player, great quarterback. Yeah, they haven't had to lean on him at all, as they've really just been running. Hurts hasn't really done much in the pass game. If they're going to get back to a Super Bowl, and if they're going to win a ton of games and have success in the postseason, he's going to have to throw the ball at some point. But with Barkley, that offensive line, that's what they're built on, that Philadelphia grit, that toughness. I have them winning the East, no problems whatsoever, securing the 2 seed. 3 seed, I have the Los Angeles Rams. Thought about, moving off this after the back stuff with Stafford, but when he's out there and he's healthy, he's so good. He is so good, even at his age. If you look at some of the highlights or the tape from the Rams, even these first 2 games of this year, some of the throws that he's already made this year are just stupid throws from Matthew Stafford. Great head coach in McVay. Second best head coach, the best head coach not named Andy Reid. Great defense, youth all over the place. They can cover, they can rush the passer. They're disciplined. They're always going to be one of the least penalized teams. Have had some bad luck with injuries in the past, but if they can stay healthy, I think they're going to win that division. Have them as the 3 seed. Tampa Bay, have them at that 4 seed. I think they're clearly the best team in the South. And, can Atlanta, fight with them a little bit? Yeah, maybe, sure. But I think Tampa Bay is going to win that division, and you'll see them probably have 10, 11 wins this year with Baker Mayfield if he can stay healthy. And they're kind of like that dark horse team for me that you could blink and perhaps they're in the Super Bowl, and many people going in this year didn't expect that. That's not what I have predicted, but have them winning the division being that 4 seed. All right, 3 wild cards in the NFC. 6th spot, have the San Francisco 49ers. I was looking for them to kind of get back to that dominant form that you saw them a couple of years ago. Obviously, last year, kind of a down year for Shanahan and company. Purdy, I have a lot of belief in. We'll see when he comes back, but Mac Jones is a guy I have a lot of belief in there as well. That defense has been fixed with Robert Saleh coming back. Offensive line is my biggest concern for them. If they can protect Brock Purdy and or Mac Jones, that's going to be, what could potentially hold them back. That offensive line for years has been awesome, but it's hard to withstand great offensive lines, and San Francisco's this year is certainly not nearly as good as it used to be, but I have them being 2nd place in the West, getting that top wild card spot. I had them as the 6th wild card spot. I skipped over the 5th wild card spot. That is the Detroit Lions. I said even after their loss to Green Bay, the shift in coordinators, Dan Campbell, all right, he'll be all right. He'll be just fine. We'll see exactly how his coordinator hires pan out, but he's going to put them in a fine spot. And if Jared Goff can be protected, and if that offensive line can keep him upright, he's good enough, he's talented enough, he's got the skill guys around him that he's going to make the playoffs. That's just the reality of the situation. Packers win that division, but the Lions get in as a wild card. And at that 7 spot, this one I was thinking could go multiple different ways. Have the Washington Commanders there at that spot with Jaden Daniels. Obviously, sensational rookie year, probably the best rookie year we have ever seen. They get to the conference championship last year as a rookie. The Terry McLaurin stuff, the fact that went on for as long as it did this offseason, not good, not ideal, should have happened way earlier, just kind of a head-scratcher there as it relates to that. Defensively, you have some question marks, but Dan Quinn's always been able to figure out his defenses. I think they're competent. They don't compete with Philadelphia to win that division, but they edge out Dallas. They edge out, obviously, the Giants, and I think they're in a spot where they are in the playoffs and get that last playoff spot in the NFC. All right, so the Packers get the bye as the 1 seed here. And let's break down Wild Card Weekend. Lions go to Tampa Bay, play the Buccaneers. I've got the Buccaneers winning that game. I think Baker, if he's healthy, is going to win a playoff game this year. That's just kind of how I feel. 49ers at Rams, a matchup that obviously the Rams have been dominated in, but they do have that win in the postseason over San Francisco, where obviously they went on to beat Cincinnati in the Super Bowl. But regular season-wise, Shanahan owns that matchup. I think it changes again here in the postseason. I think the Rams beat the Niners at home in Los Angeles. Probably going to be more Niners fans at that game if that game actually does transpire. But I like the Rams to win that game. Commanders, Eagles, a battle in the wild card round in the NFC East. I think Philadelphia wins that. Kind of similar to honestly what you saw in the conference championship game last year. Too tough, too physical, too much Saquon Barkley, too much offensive line. Eagles win that game. Buccaneers, Packers. I think Baker's run ends there, kind of just runs into a buzzsaw there with Green Bay. I'm really high on Green Bay. I'm going to continue to be high on Green Bay. I think they win that matchup. Rams, Eagles, a rematch of last year's playoff game. This time also would be in Philadelphia based on how I have the seeding here. I think Los Angeles actually can go into Philadelphia and win. People don't even talk about the fact they were literally a play away from winning that game last year. And who knows? They might win the Super Bowl again last year if they make one or two more plays in that play in the game in the snow against Philadelphia. I think they go to Philly. Tough place to play, especially in January, and get a victory there in that game and advance to the conference title game where they have to go to Lambeau and play the Green Bay Packers, and I have Green Bay winning that football game and advancing to the Super Bowl before losing to the Cincinnati Bengals. Those are my playoff predictions. Again, before the season, just when we started our show, wasn't able to do it before the NFL got underway, but those are my predictions right now. Not going to fully back off yet, but obviously I don't feel good at all about Cincinnati winning the Super Bowl without Joe Burrow. If Browning can keep him afloat and Burrow's back and you see a game or two and he's, picking up, at a good spot, right? Maybe not playing his best football, but it's like, okay, he can move around. Then we're back on, right? Because if Joe Burrow's out in the postseason, I'm betting on him 10 out of 10 times. Call me a homer, that's just fine. But before the year, those are my predictions. Cincinnati in the Super Bowl over Green Bay. Broke down all those playoff teams, too, as well. We'll have a college football one. Again, season started. We'll do that early next week, breaking down my college football playoff teams and predictions. And we'll have fun tracking that as the season progresses. All right, got about 12 minutes left here on the program. Game tonight, obviously, between the Miami Dolphins and the Buffalo Bills. We talked about on Off the Bench. Very much feels like a situation, where, McDaniel gets blown out in this game by Buffalo. How much longer does he have? Can he get to Thanksgiving? Chris Greer, the GM for Miami, it's always I've always scratched my head at how long he's been able to have that job because, the Dolphins, they were bad for a long time, and then it just kind of some of the draft picks, they've underachieved, I would say. They had some teams these past couple of years where they should have won a playoff game in one of these years, and they have yet to be competitive in the playoffs. So, we'll see as it relates to Miami. I was a believer in McDaniel when he got there, but all the things seemingly going sideways on him. If you're having a players-only meeting after 1 week, problem. If you're having all the reports that came out at training camp and joint practices about the Dolphins just being dysfunctional and undisciplined and not being ran like a professional football team, it's a problem, right? It's a serious, serious problem. Tua has the injury history, of course. I think he's a really, really solid NFL quarterback, but can he elevate your team in a postseason game if he's going to have to go against guys like Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, hopefully? No, he's not on that level. So he's got to be surrounded with a little bit more, and he's got to be surrounded with more of a competent defense, and that defense has been awful these past couple of years for Miami, and it's been awful these past couple of weeks for them as well. The line, last I checked, was 11.5. I think it was like 12.5. I think it was down to 11.5. I would lean on Buffalo in this game. It's at home. It's in Buffalo. Josh Allen has owned the Miami Dolphins. Short week, Thursday night. I think the lean is always, go with the better coach and the better quarterback. Buffalo is the better coach. Buffalo has the better quarterback. I think they win this game, no problem. But what I'm looking for is if some of that run game that you saw from Buffalo last week against the Jets, if that can carry over this week against Miami with James Cook. Because, the knock on Buffalo obviously has always been this team is too much Josh Allen reliant, right? He always needs to throw on the cape. He always needs to be Superman in order for them to win games and get to where they want to get to. That's just not – it's football. It's a team sport, right? That can't happen. The Buffalo Bills are not going to win a Super Bowl if their formula is up. Yep, Josh, save us, right? That can't work. And, it was good to see them, if you're a Bills fan, run the football well last week against the Jets. They're going to have to continue to do that, and they're going to have to be a little bit more buttoned up on defense. Obviously – I'm really interested in seeing that because Miami can score. They've proven that, right? And obviously the Bills gave up a ton of points in week 1 against Baltimore. But the Buffalo defense is what I'm going to have a close eye on tonight because they've got to be, you don't need to be necessarily a top 10 defense to win a Super Bowl, right? In college football, it's a little bit different right now. You need to be a top 3 or 4, 5 at the most, maybe even top 1 or 2 defense in college football to win the national title. It's not like that in the NFL here at this point. You need a top 15 defense, maybe a top 10 defense, right? But you don't need this top 5 defense to go out there and win. I don't know if the Buffalo Bills are in a spot where they have a good enough defense, but it'll be interesting to see how they play against Miami. Because, again, you can knock Mike McDaniel for, not having full control of his team. You can knock a lot of things about Miami, but in recent years they've proven that they have the ability to score points, and I think they'll probably do that tonight. It's not like a December game in Buffalo. The weather's going to be fine, so Tua's going to be able to throw the ball around a little bit better than he would be late season if they were to be playing a team in the cold, obviously. But I'm looking for Buffalo probably to win this game pretty big. Not one of the best bets of the weekend, but definitely would be on that minus 11.5 in favor of the Buffalo Bills. But Thursday Night Football on Amazon, always a good thing, and we'll certainly be tapped into that. And perhaps, talk about that tomorrow on tomorrow's show. But the Reds, they stay alive. That is huge, right? I think a lot of people wrote off the Cincinnati Reds and didn't necessarily think they were in a spot where they could still compete. And I would be the first one to say if they lost yesterday, it'd be over. But they live another day. Now they have Chicago for 4 games at home, the last homestand of the season, and it's Green night here tonight with Hunter Green on the bump. Interesting from Tito, right? And, we've talked about this, with some Chatterbox people. Well, I don't know what his problem is with Will Benson, right? As he was benched for weeks, he's been demoted to AAA, and seemingly when Benson is in there, good things happen offensively for Cincinnati, and it's a team that's one of the worst offenses in professional baseball. And in a do-or-die game, he says, we'll put Will Benson at 3 in the lineup. I mean, it's just Tito sometimes, and I like Terry Francona a lot. I hope he's back next year. But some of the stuff he has done this year really makes you scratch your head. I don't know. It just feels like he has an issue with Will Benson, which is a shock because, one guy that can actually put the ball over the fence for Cincinnati is Will Benson, and he can come up in clutch spots, and that's something that he's done throughout his career. Is his consistency there? Absolutely not. Abilities against lefties? Absolutely not. I get that, but I think Will Benson should have played more baseball this year than he did for Tito Francona. But the Reds have a chance, as I mentioned. They get a break last night. The Mets lose, and obviously they're in a spot now where there's multiple teams. It's not just the Reds and the Mets. Then you got this series with the Giants and the Diamondbacks. So you're like, okay, both these teams are like right there with us. Who are we rooting for? Okay, now we're rooting for this team, what have you. So the Giants obviously won that game yesterday late as, we pull up some standings here on the fly just so I can have these up. But, the Reds have struggled in their division this year. That obviously has been very, very true. And they've really also struggled against the Pirates, who are a horrible team. And they've, for whatever reason, had problems beating the Pittsburgh Pirates this year. Obviously, if they're going to have a chance of making the postseason going into that Milwaukee series, the final series of the year, they're going to have to do a better job against, of course, the Pittsburgh Pirates. But the Mets have the lead for the final game. Arizona has they're a game and a half behind the Mets, and then the Reds and the Giants are 2 games. So here we are again tonight. You got your guy on the mound, right? That's supposed to be your ace. Green or Abbott's probably your best pitcher. I feel the most comfortable with Abbott out there. But Green, that's your ace. This is why you're paying him millions of dollars. This is why you picked him when you picked him several years ago. To be able to come in these moments, it feels like a playoff game, right? Obviously, it's not. Obviously, it's only September 18th, but it very much feels like a playoff game here for the Cincinnati Reds tonight. And I think you're in a situation here with the 4-game series against the Cubs. You got to win 3 of them. Right? It's so frustrating because if you were even able just to win 1 game against the Athletics last weekend, you feel like you're in a much better spot than what you're at. And again, that should have been a series that you won no problem and even thought about sweeping. You get swept by the Athletics, and that is just a dagger to the heart if you're the Cincinnati Reds. And if they miss the playoffs, which probably the safe bet to say they're going to miss the playoffs. That's the series. Well, there's a lot of different series you could look back on, but that in particular is like, especially if they miss it by like a game, it's just like, come on, you can't get swept by the Athletics in that spot after creating some momentum against the Padres team there as well. But Reds still have life, and we're going to still talk about them here on the show for as long as they do have life. And we'll be live. We'll have a pregame show, obviously, live. After or in the 9th inning after the game there as well, breaking down hopefully a Reds win against the Cubs. They've had some crazy games against the Cubs this year. If you even remember back to the early summer months, just some wild games with the Chicago Cubs. But, the Cubs are in a spot where they're pretty much definitely going to secure that first wild card spot in the National League, and they're pretty much definitely not going to surpass the Milwaukee Brewers. So they're kind of in a weird spot where really, they can't lose every game, and if they win every game, obviously they can maybe make up some ground. But I don't know if necessarily, Craig Counsell is going to be doing everything he can to win these games. I think you're going to have an opportunity here to beat the Cubs 3 out of 4 in this series because they're kind of stuck, right? They're 5 games up of the Padres. All right, the Padres coming at them for that first wild card spot, and they're 5 games behind the Milwaukee Brewers for the division. So they're pretty much locked in to where they're at here with, 11 games left in the season. And I think there's going to be some opportunity for the Reds to make some noise in this series and put themselves back in a situation where they have a chance. Now, obviously, Mets is a team that you have to be constantly working thinking about, right? It's similar to what the Bengals were dealing with last year where it's like, well, you can't just focus on you. You need to focus on the other teams there as well. And the Mets have a game here shortly. So it's a big game. By the time the Reds game starts tonight, you will know what happens with the Padres. That series is split 1-1. Right now, the Mets and the Padres play at 1:10 today. And then, the Mets play the Nationals after that. And then the Cubs and then the Marlins. So probably lots of wins on this Mets schedule, especially with the Nationals for 3 and the Marlins for 3 and the Cubs. Who knows what they're really going to be playing for, but it is at Wrigley on the road. But big, critical game here at 1 o'clock, 1:10 first pitch in Flushing, Queens between the Padres and the Mets. And be sure to look at our social media pages because we're going to be tracking that on Twitter there, I am sure. And that's going to be certainly very, very interesting. But Reds have a big one tonight, big series with the Cubs. And then, they continue through that divisional gauntlet kind of to end the year. You beat the Cardinals. You got them 2 out of 3. Big win yesterday. Got the Cubs, got the Pirates. And then the Brewers, which, just to be clear here, my prediction, I feel like they're going to stay alive, just barely stay alive. Mets might drop a couple of games, and then you're going to go into that Brewers series with the chance. And then the Brewers probably going to do what they always do against you if you're the Cincinnati Reds. That's just kind of my prediction. I'm usually a glass half full guy, not a glass half empty guy. But based on what this team has shown me, based on what happened in Sacramento last weekend, you don't feel great about where things are at for Cincinnati. But plenty of life, and, of course, all the boys will have you covered in the 9th inning and beyond. Pre-game show, lots of Reds coverage coming your way, and still have life here at this point. No time to talk about J.J. McCarthy. We'll save that for another day. We'll be live again tomorrow. Off the bench, of course, 10 to 11. And then my show 11 to 12. I believe Trace Fowler is going to be back tomorrow. I know Reed Mouse is out. We'll see. It might be me and Trace on Off the Bench tomorrow. I honestly don't know what it's going to be at this point, but we're going to have plenty of Bengals conversation, Bengals preview. We'll have my Bengals preview on my show tomorrow. We'll break down some other storylines in the National Football League, perhaps college football as well. And then final segment tomorrow, my best bets of the weekend, week 2 of that, 3-3 last week. 2-0 in the NFL, and then 1-3 in college. So we'll see exactly how many plays we do tomorrow. We'll be working on that after the show here today. But best bets of the weekend, that will close out tomorrow's show. And then hopefully we can get propelled into the weekend. And hopefully we get a Cincinnati Bengals victory with Jake Browning at the helm. Speaking of the Cincinnati Bengals, we are live from Smoke Justice on Sunday, 12:30 pregame show. Reed Mouse, Andrew Collinsworth, and some others will be there at Smoke Justice. Watch along during the game, post-game show there as well. I will not be there, but a very exciting day at Smoke Justice. Big shout-out to Smoke Justice for hosting us. Obviously, we've had a few live shows there in the past as well. Looking forward to another one of those here this week. Jake Browning's first game as the starter. We'll see how things transpire there for the Cincinnati Bengals. But that will do it for our Thursday edition of the Stone Shield Show. As always, appreciate everyone for tuning in. Hit that thumbs up icon. Hit that subscribe button if you have not done so already. And we will catch you tomorrow at 10 o'clock on Off the Bench and my show at 11 tomorrow as well. Until then, take care, everybody.